Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be taking this standard scale electric guitar and turning it into a baritone. So this video is not sponsored by Stringjoy Strings, but this whole video is made possible by this custom set of Stringjoy Strings. I do personally exclusively use Stringjoy Strings. They're a Nashville-based company. They've got an excellent YouTube channel. You can make your own custom strings, and they're not any more expensive than the strings that you would get off of the shelf at your local music retailer. However, these are handmade in Nashville, Tennessee by some really cool dudes, so I highly recommend checking out Stringjoy Strings. So now that we have that free ad out of the way, let's talk about why it's a cool thing to be able to turn this standard scale electric guitar into a baritone. Baritones have extended scale length, so they have longer necks and the frets are further away from each other. And that's to accommodate heavier gauge strings and lower tunings, and being able to still maintain a relative tension that's similar to a standard scale electric guitar tuned with standard gauge strings to standard tuning. Now, baritones can come in a variety of scale lengths, as short as 26.5 inches all the way up to as long as 30-inch scale. And that's nearing short scale bass territory. So it's a longer neck. I think that makes you play different inherently because you're playing a guitar with such a longer scale. It makes you play in a different way, similar to how changing different guitars will make you inspired to play in different ways. The biggest barrier, I think, to most people playing baritone is you don't have a guitar that has a long scale that's set up for baritone always. And to be able to buy a guitar just to experiment or see if you like baritone tunings, I think is a barrier big enough that it prevents most people from trying it. So I saw a post recently, I believe it was from Stringjoy, about how Ariel Posen, who uses standard scale electric guitars but in baritone tunings, and check out Ariel Posen stuff if you've not checked him out. He's an incredible slide player and predominantly plays in baritone tuning. He uses this custom set of strings from Stringjoy, and they're gauge 17 to 64. Now, they made a post of what each string gauge was. He doesn't have necessarily like a signature set that you can just buy, but you can order your custom set and dial in these specific gauges for each string, which is 17 on the high E, a plain 20 for the B string, a wound 30 for the G string, wound 40 for the D string, wound 52 for the A string, and a wound 64 for the low E. I have this set up in B standard, and for me this is an approximation of standard gauge strings, maybe 10s or 11s on this guitar tuned to standard. Now, Supro has made in this exact same configuration a baritone, but this is not that. This is not a long neck, this is standard scale. I believe this is 24 3/4 scale. So it is standard with your Gibson style of guitar builds as far as scale length is involved. So let's take a look at unboxing these strings, just kind of the setup work that may be involved if you want to try this for yourself, and then we'll listen to some tones. Alright, so we have the Supro here, and I've already clipped the old strings, and I'm just going to show you, do a quick little unboxing. I went ahead and just got multiple packs of these strings, and here they are in all their glory. So they're the Stringjoy signatures and the custom set 17 to 64. And so that's what we're going to be putting on here, and I'll have to string it up, and I'm also going to have to do a setup because we're making such a big leap. This was also not only was this set up for 12s, which is what I normally play, but it was also set up really high for a slide. So we're gonna have to do a totally new setup on here. So we'll put these strings on and go from there. So I'm actually going to polish these frets up and do kind of a full setup, just get this thing playing as good as I can, with also making this change to baritone. So also apologize for the messy bench, but this is honest. I'm working on guitars throughout the week and really frequently, so this is kind of what an honest repair bench really looks like. So what I've just done is there was just a little bit of fret sprout on this guitar. This is not you know, some crazy high-end guitar. I got it on a crazy deal. They kind of blew these guitars out when they decided to kind of go a different direction, and but it is an incredible guitar. I mean, it's mahogany body, mahogany neck, and it's not like some of the other Supros, lost the bridge there, where it's like hollow. This is a solid guitar. It's set neck. You know, it's a real instrument for sure, and it's great to have around, especially with this single coil pickup in there. I don't necessarily love it. I've always thought about throwing something in there, but I just use it for really specialty things, like having it set up in an open tuning for slide, how it was previously, or like what we're doing today, converting it to be kind of staying in baritone. So something that if you're going to try this yourself, that you're going to have to do with a low E string at 64, that's substantially more than even my 12 gauge set that I typically go to 52. Some of the stock 12 gauge electric sets that you get will go to 54 sometimes, and even 56 if you go Ernie Ball. But 64 is substantial, and so we're going to have to do some work on the nut here just to widen that slot. Probably we will also notch the bridge a little bit, just to kind of hold that string in place on the saddle. And so that's just something to be aware of. If this is something that you're trying for yourself, know that there is some setup involved, obviously changing the tunings and the string gauge. There's going to be some setup involved, but there's also a little bit of filing on the nut and saddle. But there's countless YouTube channels that kind of show you how to do that. I would recommend getting really high quality, not the cheapo Amazon nut slotting files. However, take it to your local tech if it's not something that you're comfortable with. This wouldn't be an expensive thing to do. Get it set up with thicker strings for baritone tuning. All right, so we've got it strung up, and I'm doing just B standard is where I'm going with this. That's a kind of fun, happy place to be in for me. And so, and the cool thing about it is, if you're unfamiliar or if you're kind of new to doing any kind of open or alternate tunings, your low E becomes a B, but then everything's kind of shifted. Now I'm not doing the full Ariel Posen thing. I know he, at least for a while, was using all fourths, which just means how your B string is tuned to a third instead of a fourth. He continued fourths all the way, so you don't get the octave notes of the high E and low E. But your low E becomes a B, your A strings becomes an E, your D string becomes an A, your G becomes a D. So in that regard, these three are just kind of shifted over. Then you've got F sharp. That's if you're playing standard tuning and going to the third there, you go into F sharp and then to B. And so now we're gonna just kind of intonate it. All right, sorry about that, the camera died. So we're going B to B here. Now we're just gonna do a setup, and then we'll plug it in and see what this thing can do. All right, so we are all set up, and I don't know if you can see where these saddles are. I might be able to see if I can get this in focus here. But we're kind of maxed out on the G and E strings. However, we're perfectly in tune. And so, you know, for being what this guitar is, and I think it's pretty representative of your most common mid-range guitar as far as build quality and specs, I think you're going to have no problem. And that's the beauty of this set of strings with these gauges. The way that Ariel Posen uses them is he uses standard scale guitars, and because you're tuning it lower, even though you're going such a major uptick in strings, where the saddles are going to intonate. Now, one thing to also mention is all standard scale guitars typically are going to be in that 25.5-inch scale, which is Fender, 25-inch scale PRS, or 24 3/4, which is Gibson. And when the Strat came out, there wasn't 10 gauge strings. People used 16, 17 gauge strings because that's what there was, until Ernie Ball comes around and starts making these really light gauge strings, and then eventually can get mass produced. People were using extremely heavy strings, so bending wasn't a thing. The third string was wound the way that it is here, and so your guitars initially, you know, the scale was set for this. Now, guitars aren't necessarily built for that much tension, and those early designs were not perfect. But all that being said, this is your best, you know, cheapest option to get a baritone if you don't own one. Instead of buying a new guitar, you know, buying an inexpensive set of strings with very, very minimal setup work. I mean, most of the setup on this that needed changing was because I had it in an open tuning previously, and set up, you know, with the different gauge strings. But if it was set up in standard, this would have been an even easier job. So just know that this is going to be fine with your bridge placement on your standard scale electric guitar if you're kind of doing this standard scale baritone method. So this thing is set up. It was really easy to do, and like I said before, the tension is approximately what you would get with like a 10 gauge set of strings, maybe 11s, on a standard scale tuned to standard tuning. I've got this set up B to B, and so we're just in B standard, and man, it just, chords sound massive it sounds a little more epic just because of the lower tuning. I've played baritones predominantly on studio session work, and it kind of it inspires me in a different way every time I play a baritone. So having this set up with a little shorter scale, it's a little more familiar, and it's such an easy way to get into a baritone without having to buy a new guitar. It's just buying a set of strings and, you know, spend a half hour, spend an hour looking some YouTube videos up and setting up your guitar. You'll be better for it. You know, just the knowledge that you're learning about setup work, but also being able to have something that's going to inspire you in a different way. So here's just some open chords. This is pretty clean. It just sits in such a different place, and I'm finding, you know, that my overdrives are really blooming in such a cool way that is different just because of the tuning. So we'll just put on some kind of mid-gain. Finding that it's making me want to play a little slower and think about where I am on the neck a little more in a different way than, you know, in a standard tuning. And the way that these overdrives are blooming, now you might have to do some EQ changes because if you have something that's already tends to be a little muddy or a little flubby, this is going to accentuate that. So like here's more of like a Zen drive sound. It's a little muddy. But if you go to a brighter distortion that doesn't get as muddy, you can still have that real smooth top end. Kind of over bending because it's a little sloppy compared to what I'm used to with 12s, but it's really comfortable. It's actually kind of fun to play with a little looser tension as well. And of course with fuzz, that's in that Joey Landreth, Ariel Posen territory anyways. Kind of blooms again, especially with fuzzes, just having that super low end response and being a little floppier, you know, on that low B string, just puts it in a different place. It makes me play in a different way. I think I'm playing a lot more careful with this because it's different. I'm kind of relearning you know, just the intricacies of the fretboard being tuned this low, and the string gauges being different. It just is making me play in a different way, which is amazing. Kind of sparking that creativity from something fresh, I think is really valuable, especially with all the gear and things that we get into. I know I typically just go for really smooth and dynamic sounding drive pedals, and sometimes that can get stagnant, and so being able to have something that's going to inspire me, play in a different way, and just another tool. If you've got a guitar sitting around that you haven't played in, you know, quite a while, and you've been wanting to try baritone tunings, if you think Joey Landreth and Ariel Posen and that slide baritone, really smooth, dynamic blues sound is the thing that's it's really getting popular right now. This is such a great way to get into it at a low barrier. It's an easy way to get into a baritone, and I'd recommend checking it out. Well, hope you enjoyed today's video. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, please ask that you like and subscribe to this new channel, share it with others. And if you want a custom song written and recorded by me, check out my profile on Songfinch. There'll be a link down in the description. That's a great way to support me right now in these kind of early stages of this channel. Until next time, I've been Colin.